It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets. This is the Great Writers Share podcast with your host, best-selling author, Daniel Willcocks.
Hello and welcome to the Great Writers Share podcast, a podcast where we hijack an hour or so of time from some of the kindest and hardest working writers around today to join us on the show and discuss everything that makes us tick, roar, and bounce. Today, we're going to forego the usual format because I have a special Christmas guest, and Santa has pulled along my favorite Christmas elf of all time, which is the one and only Luke Kondor. How you doing, Luke?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm glad I'm out of Santa's sack and out in the open air again. It's very warm in there. Sticky for some reason.
Just the best place to start, but what a way to go. But we're
in Santa's sack. Yeah.
But yeah, I figured that, it's Christmas and we can get a bit more informal. And you're one of these people that obviously, like, people who listen to the show know you. Number one, because you were the first guest on this show.
Oh yeah.
Number two, because we did 50 episodes of the Story Studio together. Mm-hmm. And number three, you do get mentioned quite a lot because obviously you're a fundamental part of my journey as a writer, and I hope I'm in some way fundamental to you. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for the people who have missed out on some of those episodes or some of the sort of mentions and whatnot, are you right just to give us a little overview on what you do, who you are? Who the hell are you, Luke Kondor?
Yeah, so my name's Luke Kondor. It's Kondor spelled with a K. Spelled like the bird, but with a K. I am a writer, filmmaker. I kind of a bit of an all-round creative, I guess, these days. But I started Hawk and Cleaver with Dan 5 years ago.
2015.
Nearly 5 years ago. We started the other stories together. My voice is the voice that you hear saying, "These are the other stories."
Oh, chills.
Yeah, I don't know. We've kind of found our feet around the same sort of time, really. Although I haven't written 50 books like you have.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I can't believe when you posted that the other day. 50 books.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are ghostwritten, so they won't be in my name. But you've done 50 pamphlets now. Crap. That's doubled. It's doubled since we last spoke. Dark horse.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've done we've done a lot together. Like 2015, which is mad because it's pretty much 5 years, almost to the week, to the day in which we sat down and all had our first Hawk and Cleaver call.
Nearly, yeah.
Because I'm sure that was around, was that mid to end of December?
I think it may have been between Christmas Day and New Year's Day in that weird week.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think maybe.
Yeah. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I reached out to Matt about how much I loved his book. He gave me some advice on Sins of Smoke when that was launching and sort of helped me give it a bit of a boost to the top of that chart. And then got pulled into the madness that is Hawk and Cleaver, and it's kind of like spiraled from then. But I don't know, like how, because obviously we had you on the show in January and we were talking sort of about goals and things for 2020.
Yeah.
How do you see your journey's changed over like the last 5 years? And I know that's quite a big question to start with.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this quite recently. 2020 has been a bit of a weird year for me.
Just for you, for no one else.
Primarily for me, I think, maybe for other people as well. I'm not too sure. So I found like 2019 was a really good writing year for me. I really liked what I wrote, and I wrote on my side of it what I consider a fair bit. Not quite as much as what your word counts are, but I realized what I was writing. Two of those books I wrote in 2019 are with publishers now. I self-published another one, which I was quite happy with. And then 2020 came around and I found myself, I don't know why, I think I found myself in a bit of a year of discovery. So I didn't intend to do this, but I think I was what it was, I was writing another novella and I found myself touching on the same ground again. And I was feeling a little bit, I don't know, I don't ever really like to feel like I'm doing the same thing again, just because it comes quite naturally and it's easy to me. So then I ended up working, I don't know, I just started on a path of learning. So I was like, started to learn games development. So this year I'd learned how to program C# scripts. and I've made like 5 or 6 games now. Not huge games in the same way someone would write a short story. Those kind of games, short games. But that was always like a black magic to me before, like a dark art. Like I couldn't understand how you play a game like Inside or something like that, and you don't understand how code and images can come together in that way. But now I feel like I've got a really good understanding of it, and coding was not natural to me at all. Like it's I'm so glad I've done it, and it's given me a lot of confidence and has taught me a lot about the overall creative process, and I've got a lot of takeaways from game development. But yeah, so I feel like this year's been a crazy one. What else? I've made a film, not a short film, like a feature film. It's like a no budget made in my garage kind of film, but it is a feature film. So that, and I've been talking to some interesting development companies about that. So I don't know. And my writing has really taken a step back this year, but that's all changing this December. I'm writing. Okay. I'm writing again. Watch out.
Uh-oh. Why? What are you doing with your writing? Well, that sounds really ominous.
I know. I just mean like I was looking at my word counts, and although I've done all this other stuff, like the last 4 or 5 years, I've been doing like 200,000 words a year along those kind of lines. And then this year I was like, I've done like 15,000, and it's nothing. Like it just feels like absolutely nothing. But because I've been doing all this other stuff, that's taken 3 months per project. So the years kind of got away from me. But seeing that has kind of inspired me to get writing again. But yeah, it's been weird. But it's not like I haven't been doing any publishing stuff. I've been going through the slightly more traditional publishing route, which is interesting. It's nothing like self-publishing.
No, talk to us a little bit about that, because obviously you wrote quite a few novellas and things last year, and then you've pitched those, and now you've seen more of the process of that side firsthand. And obviously, is it 2 of them have been accepted? Yeah. Obviously, I don't think we can go into huge details on them, but
yeah, so they're both accepted and are due to come out. One of them was supposed to come out August this year, but I think COVID has kind of delayed their production schedule. So I would say that the wheels of publishing in the more traditional, and this is only like small press publishers, so they're not like the big 5, or is it down to big 3, big 2 now? How many is it?
Maybe 3 or 4. I can't remember. It's been quite a few mergers.
Yeah. So another merger. So they it's very slow. It's so slow, and they're so different as well. These 2 publishing companies. I would say it's not that dissimilar. It's just you don't have as much creative control. You can't just say, I'm going to put a book out. Here's the cover I want to have for it. Here's the marketing plan. It was weird because I went to a couple of publishers and said, I've made this cover. And they were like, okay, nice. Thanks. This is kind of what we do this bit now.
Yeah.
Editing process has been more intense on one of the projects, in the sense that they're asking more about context, and it's more of like a line edit rather than like a copy edit, which I guess I'm more used to the self-publishing side of things. Yeah, it's quite similar, surprisingly similar, but very different.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm in the position, like, because I do have a want in 2021, I think, to potentially write something and put it out there and see if it gets picked up by anyone. But at the same time, there's such a, like, the only reason I feel like I would want to put my book into the hands of someone else is audience building. Because in terms of the process of actually publishing a book, like you say, there's not all that much that's just dissimilar. And when you self-pub, you can keep all the control yourself about the things that you like, which arguably, whether or not you understand the market as strongly as maybe someone else that like publishes other people. But I think that's the only real reason, because I feel like I want to do it, and I don't know if it's for my own ego or what, but there does seem to be something validating about having someone go, yes, actually your book is good to publish, or good enough to publish through us.
So there is that validation, but it's very fleeting. So you do get that kind of validation of like, someone likes it. If you're like me, in my kind of my natural mindset is to immediately move on from that and start thinking
Mm-hmm.
no one cares, or like you don't hear back from your publisher for a month or so. That which apparently is quite normal for some of them because they've got a lot of stuff going on. And then you'll suddenly think, oh, why haven't they got back to me? They must hate me now. Oh God, what have I done? Yeah, it's interesting. But it's strange because when I see Max Booth, he traditionally published with loads of cool companies, and then he self-published. We Need to Do Something, and now that's been filmed it's been adapted for film already by Josh Malerman's company, and he just self-published it, and it seems to have got a life of its own. So I don't know which. I don't know if there's a correct answer for which is the correct route anymore.
No, it's hard because a lot of my understanding of publishing now, if you want to particularly make certain moves and certain plays, it's networking and it's playing a little bit of that game. Mm-hmm. Like you can self-pub and you can build a successful base for yourself as one way to grab attention, because obviously anyone that then sees that you're already selling, they're going to want to get onto the back of that bandwagon. Mm-hmm. But then there are, and particularly within horror, because obviously I launched Devil's Rock this year, and we've been publishing in and out of horror and things over the past few years. Yeah. There is I don't like the word click, but there is a kind of like clicky. Mm-hmm. There's groups. There's people who it's very, very useful to know. It's very, very useful to kind of at least get your name in the mix and to get people aware of who you are. And I think sometimes when you're submitting all the short stories and different things like that, like that serves in your favor in that way, and then that leads to potential things later. But it's never a guarantee. It's not a guarantee in any way. Like the whole publishing thing is still a gamble.
So there are clicks. I think another word for that is just friendship groups. So people who sort of are just close friends, and they kind of, and you kind of feel like you want to get in on that action because they're having such a great time. But you're right. I do think you kind of want to get into those groups because they obviously have like pulling power with audiences. I'm going to bring up Max Booth a few times because I feel like Max Booth is the ideal of the modern horror independent / like hybrid author. He podcasts with all of the names of people from those different groups and traditionally published authors and filmmakers and comic book makers. He has that Ghoulish podcast. So he's networking. He's covered that base. He's traditionally publishing with like bigger, small press companies. What were they called? Fangoria Press published one of his books, and Cemetery Summit. They
Cemetery Dance.
Yeah. Cemetery Dance, they published another of his books. And he's also self-publishing, and he's got his own Perpetual Motion Machine publishing press. He's kind of covering all the bases, and he's also a fantastic writer. So I feel like doesn't matter what genre you want to get into, I feel like Max Booth is the ideal.
Lose yourself in it. And
yeah,
and it has to be genuine as well. Like we spoke to Max on the Story Studio podcast, and I think it was probably around episode 40ish. It was one of the last ones that we did, I think. Mm-hmm. So if people want to check that out, then I'd definitely say that's well worth a listen. Although that'll be that was 3 years ago, so
that's crazy.
He's done a lot since then.
He's never stopped. That's the thing. He's never stopped.
Perpetual Motion.
Yeah. Wow. He's found Perpetual Motion. Yeah.
Exactly. Living his company.
Yeah. I mean, go on. Sorry, man.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier as well about sort of, I can't remember in what context, but it came up about celebrating and sort of like taking a moment to appreciate your wins. We traditionally both used to be quite bad at that, and I still am. Have you gotten any better at celebrating your wins? Because you've done, like you said, you've done a lot this year. You've got the feature film, you've developed games, you've had another comic successfully kickstarted, you've had books taken by publishers. Are you still as bad at taking that time to celebrate as me?
Probably worse this year. In terms of overall mental health, I feel like I have not been putting the effort or concentration into my mind as much as I have done in the past. And that thing is like a car, like it needs constant maintenance. So yeah, I've kind of let it sort of rust, that kind of part of me.
Yeah.
So it's only like the past month or so I've really started to get back into not self-improvement, but just sort of self-maintenance, making sure that I'm being grateful for good stuff and talking to people on the phone. I found has been really helpful. When I was making the film, you do a little bit every day, and some days it goes amazing. It's the same as writing. Some days it goes amazing. Some days you feel like you're an absolute boob, and you're like, I need to talk to someone. And then I had this friend Matt who's also making a feature film, his first feature film as well. So we just talk on the phone about it, and which is probably what our podcast was originally at the Story Studio. It's kind of like you just need to chat to someone about what's going on, and it kind of grounds you. It keeps you going.
I'll be honest, I do miss that podcast. I've gone back a few times this year and listened to some of the earlier episodes, particularly obviously with Great Writer Share. This is going to be, I believe, episode 68. So there's a nice backlog behind, and over time you get better at podcasting and you get used to nuances and whatnot. And it was like, for me, it was really interesting to go back to the first 1 to 5 episodes and just remember where it all came from, because I remember...
Were we quite nervous?
We were very nervous. And I think at the same time, there was an element of bluster from me particularly, because you'd podcasted before, so there was some familiarity within that arena for you. But for me, it was a complete plunge in the dark. Like, you suggested doing the podcast together. I was like, okay, no, like, it's your fault that any of this has happened.
I'm very sorry.
But there was an element of me feeling like, because I was going into the space in which we were talking about writing, and we were I hate the word thought leaders, but we were putting our thoughts and our opinions on a pedestal for others to listen to. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, well, in that case, I have to pretend to be a little bit more professional than I actually am. So I think in the early episodes, it's a bit more straight laced for me. There's not as much fun, because I think I'm trying to like communicate intelligence and experience that wasn't there.
It's weird when you I think I was the same way, and you kind of stress about it a little bit more, about how you're coming across to people, and because you're stressing about it, I think you come across a little bit worse. It's only when you sort of accept that you are who you are that you kind of make bad jokes, or just I don't know, just be yourself.
Yeah, and we also had really surprisingly good guests. I think that was one of the things that blew me away as well, was how quickly up the ladder of quote successful people you get, and how quickly you can build those relationships with people, and just like how willing people are to come on the show and just talk to you about craft and writing. Obviously the Story Studio was, the whole point was, it was just any creative endeavor, and it was just talking about the art and the love of art. But it still blows me away, some of the guests that we had very, very early on, and some of those friendships that still circle and come back round today, people we keep in contact. Like I had Ian Rob Wright on this year as a bit of a comeback, and it was just good catching up with him and just remembering that he came on that show. And he was also one of the first indie authors to ever actually reply to a tweet that I'd sent him, just saying that I appreciate his work. And that had such a huge impact on me, and it was such a tiny little like note.
I've got to say, I was listening to your interview with Josh Malerman as well, and I feel like your interviewing prowess, or your interviewing skill, or whatever, is you come a long way. I think it, not that you weren't started out from a good place. I don't know. I just felt like I was listening to it, and you sounded so comfortable. And I was like, "You're talking to Josh Malerman. Do you remember that you're talking to Josh Malerman?" I
mean, I will be honest. The secret was like 3 whiskeys before we started speaking.
That's what it is.
It was. That's whiskeys. It. Just get drunk. Like, I'm literally sat here next to a bottle of Red Label, and some of that's gone just because I'm talking to you. It's not.
Thanks.
Yeah, but that. Yeah, I mean, it helped. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that is probably up there in my top few interviews of all time.
What's your top 2 interviews?
Oh, I'm scared to say, because I don't want to upset people. Like Josh is definitely up there, just because, number one, he's an incredibly talented guy, and he's done some fantastic things. But he's also,
you just had a very nice laugh. Did you know?
He had a very nice laugh. Yes,
just like he's quite a cheeky little chappy, Josh. I liked him.
Yeah, and he's an artist.
Yeah,
first and foremost, like, he's the definition of an artist, and I think I really appreciate that, because he's also not one to bullshit the process or what it takes, because like, what's the point? Like, just it doesn't get you anywhere. So he's up there. And then I don't know. I think I'm going to be biased because it's going to come back to another horror author, but Jonathan Jans, that was.
You realise I was on the show as well, don't you?
Well, I can't use the people that are currently on the show, can I?
I'm only joking.
And I mean, if anything, you've been on this show more times than most people. If
one of these days I'll be in your top 2.
You're always in my top 2. We did a fucking podcast together.
Yeah.
We've written 3 books together, Luke. 2 novellas.
Yeah.
3 novellas, maybe. Short stories. We've done lots together. You know you're my boo. You know you're my favorite. But yeah, Jonathan Jans was a good one, just because, again, for me, it comes back. It's not even down to their process or them as writers. It's them as people. Because Jonathan Jans was just such a good human, and he was such a positive guy and so transparent and honest. Jonathan Jans.
Jonathan Jazz, that's a cool name, though.
Jonathan Jazz. But yeah, he was there.
Jans.
Yeah, Jan's hands. But yeah, I don't know. There've been a lot of interviews over the years that I've just massively enjoyed. It is. I tell you what, it's a different experience interviewing other people solo. So I think that was one thing I was cautious of when starting this podcast was the story show that we did together. And if you go silent or if something happens, you've got someone there.
Back up.
And just there have been moments in interviews, obviously people won't hear because of the magic of editing, where like I do remember one quite specifically at the end of last year when there was a lot going on in my personal life, and I asked a question, they answered it, went quiet, and then I literally just froze and was like, okay, I'm just gonna need a minute. And I don't know what it was, but like something just happened, and for about 2 minutes I was like, okay,
well,
no,
you just blame Zoom. Just don't move.
Just
just stay still until you thought of your next thing.
That would have been better.
Yeah, no, you sounded very, very comfortable. I didn't. You know what? I was listening to Tim Ferriss' podcast a lot recently. As part of my mind maintenance, that's a good podcast to.
Oh yeah, every day
get yourself back into the. But you can hear that Tim takes his time. Like I imagine, like sometimes between questions, he just sits there silently and thinks. Like you could just kind of hear that he doesn't rush for anything.
No.
Yeah, that's a good podcast. What podcast are you listening to at the minute? Any other mind maintenance kind of podcasts?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Tim Ferriss. I listen to Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. Danica Patrick's Pretty Intense.
Yeah. Is that about tents?
No, unfortunately, no. It's not. It's not about glamping. No, she's an ex racer, from what I understand, and now she's kind of entered that arena of getting experts on her show and just picking their brain apart and stuff. So you'll normally find that people will do a circuit as well, because like Seth Godin was on Tim Ferriss recently, and then he's on a bunch of other podcasts, and Matthew McConaughey's been everywhere over the past few weeks because of his new book.
Yeah, I was following. Who was it I was listening to? Sometimes I do that. I'll follow the person along with the podcast tour. They talk about a lot of the same things, but if it's a person you're really, really inspired by, it's worth following them like a digital groupie.
Yeah, I'm just having a look to see what if I've got anyone else that's sort of specific in that arena.
Yeah.
Gary V. I'm on him.
Gary V. Gary V is an interesting one. I really liked his. It was like a YouTube show. I think he YouTubes his entire life now, but there's a YouTube show. It's like he'd go to not boot yard sales, car boot sales. What did he call yard sales?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. Yard sales.
And he'd go to these like yard sales. And he'd film himself buying these like toys and trinkets and stuff. And he'd get dead excited about buying badges or whatever. And then he'd flip them on eBay. And he'd make like tons and tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think I might go to the car boot sale and do some flipping.
There's money to be had.
Yeah, but then you just look at him. He's so passionate about his trinkets and knickknacks. I'm not that passionate about knickknacks. Like I would look at a toy and think that no one's going to buy that.
But then that's the thing, isn't it? Like someone will. And then it annoys me when I find out that toys that I once had in the loft that we threw are worth like £300-400 for some reason.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind flipping furniture. I did it like
out of anger.
Project. Yeah, just because it's just a good stress reliever. I wouldn't mind flipping furniture. I upcycled some bookshelves, and I found that really therapeutic and just cool to see they were £10. I think these bookshelves. Someone had thrown them out, and it's just really, really satisfying to sort of sand them down, oil them up, oil myself up.
Beautiful. Yeah, why not go for the full? I mean, you've got the hell of a bushy beard now. Like, you're going for the full lumberjack.
It's accidental. I actually got rid of it fairly recently, and it seemed to resist, and it's grew back.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it listened to you.
I think it was only like a month ago I trimmed it all the way back.
Wow.
Yes, it's not normally this fat. It's my winter coat, I guess.
Well, your thing used to be that when you were working on a project, you wouldn't shave, so you could always tell how far through a book you were by how hefty the beard was.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking this year is the project, so maybe I shouldn't have shaved for 2020. Oh well.
What podcasts have you been listening to, or what specific things have you been doing to get your mental health back in check and to shake off the rust?
I've always been a journalizer. I think I've told you that many times, that I journal every morning. But with renewed vigor, I've been sort of delving deep into my mind. I've been just doing lots of give myself lots of gaps of time to think, which sounds really, really dumb. But like just having like a just free writing in a notepad, put some music on, put the Tenet soundtrack on, or some game soundtracks or something, and just think about what do I actually want from this crazy
Who
thing?
am I?
Who are you? Yeah. But it helps. I mean, I think especially with this kind of year, I was having a soul searching year, trying bits of everything. And I think just sort of asking myself the questions a lot. I was watching, there's a YouTuber who you will know actually, called Jack Conte. Jack Conte is in a band called Pomplamoose, something like that. But which you won't know them. But he's the CEO of Patreon. He's the guy who made Patreon. He's been a YouTuber in a band for a long, long, long time, and he made Patreon because he wasn't making any money from YouTube ads, so he wanted to build this thing. But he's got a great YouTube channel where he posts kind of creative how-tos and creative inspiration videos and that kind of thing. And he had like a year in review, or like how to plan for a year, one of those kind of videos. And the biggest concept that kind of stuck with me was he has something called a retro, where you look back at 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and you really dive deep into what worked. Not only what worked, but what you really enjoyed, what the projects that you got really lost in. So just kind of doing smaller versions of that has been really helpful. Also noting down my mood. Also running a lot more again.
Hey.
Which I was going to talk to you about, because I know you've been doing it. Running a lot more again, and eating a lot better. Doing some pull-ups. You know why I'm doing pull-ups is because we tried to do Tough Mudder. I couldn't lift myself up on that chuffing ring thing.
Killed me so much, like, because I went back for the second attempt, didn't I? Yeah, like, because my hand slipped, and I was like, it's just because I got slippy hands. So I dried my hands. I was like, nope, it's because I'm weak as hell.
Like I was so confused. It felt like my body betrayed me. Like how I got to the point where I can't lift myself up. So that
was a brutal, like, just for for listeners, we did, was it a 5K or a 7K?
5K, yeah.
It was a 5K Tough Mudder, and there was no mud. It was a hot summer day. Like, there was no, like, you expect to get wet and dirty.
Dust. Yeah,
there was a lot of dust. And two things I remember very vividly from that day, and one I probably shouldn't remember. Number one is the sort of monkey bars at the end where we both sort of quite epically failed. Yeah. And the other one was they had the steel scaffolding A-frame that you had to climb up one side, and it was sort of nets and things across it, and then down the other side. And because I climbed down the other side backwards, I turned around to sort of jump off and run, and there was just a metal bar there, and I full on just like smacked my head on the metal bar. I think you were slightly ahead at that point, and I was trying not to show that it got me.
So you put your hand down over your forehead.
Yeah, just running along, just like stars, just trying to connect which one was the real Luke Kondor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun run.
So to fix that, I now have a pull-up bar. It's one of those that you kind of hang in the doorway.
I've got one of those,
and I have that just by the kettle. So whenever I go to make tea, I drink so much coffee and tea. It's a bad habit, but it's just I really enjoy it. So what are you gonna do? And
all right, I'm not judging you.
Every time I'm boiling the kettle, I just do five pull-ups, and I couldn't do like 3 in a row when I first started. But now I'm on like 20 or so. you can't see it. It's made no difference physically. So you have to do it for the love of it, for the love of lifting myself up.
When no one else will.
Exactly, yeah. What if you find yourself in a pull-up contest, surprise pull-up contest, and you can't do it, and everyone knows you can't pull yourself up? Or you find yourself hanging over the side of a cliff?
Then what? Yeah, I did a nuclear race last year.
Bloody hell.
I know.
Nuclear.
Big
countries do nuclear races.
I know. But it was 7K and it was 70 obstacles. And it took 2.5 hours. It was grueling. And there were points along that journey where it was a very similar thing where I had to skip a couple of things that annoyed me because I just didn't have the muscle strength. But also, like the 4 months previous to that, I had intense back problems. So I did as much as I could. But I found that as long as I can be agile on certain things, I can trick the strength. So they had this massive wall at the end and they had people with like rope and they're trying to pull themselves up. And you have these huge guys that it's all slippery and muddy because that one, it was, you went through a lot of bugs. It was very, very wet. And I came up just behind some people and I was just like, if I don't do this on the first attempt, I'm going to fail. And this wall must have been about 20 foot high. It had little ladder pieces and then just rope. Yeah. And I just went and just sprung up and then got the end. And it was just, because it was the last hurdle as well, every last inch of me just, I managed to make it. But I'm not happy. I wasn't happy with the performance because you feel like you want to have done the obstacles.
That's kind of it's like a kid going to a park and not being able to get up the ladder on the slide.
Yeah.
What was the point then? I failed as a kid.
And they're not cheap as well, those races. Some of them aren't.
Yeah, they're not, yeah. We should do another one. I mean, you've been doing running anyway. You did your first 10K this year, right?
Yeah, that was an experience because it was probably because of lockdown. I'm confused by what happened this year, what time is, and who I am. So often, like this year for me, January and February doesn't exist. January, I cannot remember what happened in January and February apart from I moved house in December, but that's not January and February.
Yeah, it's not.
But yeah, I don't know. I just decided to do the Couch to 10K app because we've done 5Ks. I've done 5Ks with people before, and I wanted whatever that next challenge was. And the Couch to 5K, Couch to 10K, is all incremental. Have you used that app?
No, but I'm fairly certain I would have done something similar to build up to the 10K.
It's just incremental, and it's you pick which sort of week you're comfortable starting on. In the beginning, you're only really doing about 2K, and you're walking and alternating between running and jogging. And after 13 weeks, which 3 months ish, isn't that big an amount of time. It would just like we were saying earlier. There's something about noticing quite noticeably your progress as you go on. And I found that with running, you get to a certain point where when you first start running, the pain is your barrier and the discomfort is your barrier. But I think we've said this in the past privately as well. With running, you get to a point of discomfort that you can just deal with. It's just manageable discomfort, which is what running is. So you get to a point where going from 1K to maybe 3 or 4K is a bit of a challenge. But then going from 4K to 10K isn't really that bad. Yeah, it's just when you pushing your boundaries a bit more.
There's like parts of your muscles or joints that are just not used to moving in that way. So just everything hurts. But you get to a certain point where it's manageable. It gets to the point where it can be as difficult as you want it to be.
Yes.
Like you can go for quite an easy one. Though I always feel like if I think to myself, I'm going for an easy one, it'll end up being really difficult. It's only when I go, right, it's going to be difficult, let's get ready mentally, then it becomes quite manageable.
It must be just your head preparing for the shit and like giving you whatever that extra fuel is. But yeah, my first 10K was actually an accident.
Whoops.
Yeah, I didn't put that in the post to celebrate, but it was like I believe that day it should have worked out about 9, a little over 9, and it has. Instead, I had like a couple of sort of scheduled 10, 20-second breaks in that. I think it had about 2 breaks where you walk it. But then I was running along waiting for the stop to come, and I pulled up to where my street is. And normally I'm like, because I'd managed to find out what the distance was on certain circuits so I could time it up quite nicely with me getting back to my house. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's not gone. All right, I'll just keep going. Kept going for another 5-10 minutes. And then I looked at my thing and I was on my Fitbit and just went, oh, I'm nearly at 10K. I might as well just hit that last 10K. And then when I checked my phone to see where the app was doing, the app had frozen.
Oh, no.
But it worked out well in the end because I did a 10K.
What are you gonna do a half marathon next? That's like kind of the next step.
Yeah, I think so. My 2021, some of the big things I think I want to do is dial back on the amount of stuff I'm doing, because I did do a lot this year and I haven't stopped. I'm aware of that, and although I'm proud of what I've done, although like I have done a lot of really, really cool stuff, I am at the point where I can feel myself just fundamentally exhausted at this point. So 2 things I want to do next year: number 1, factor in more breaks, and number 2, really regiment some kind of workout routine that includes running, because I run every other day when I can. And that run at the minute is anywhere between 3 and 5K.
Yeah.
I've kind of pulled it back a bit just for time wise more than anything, because I found that when I was doing a lot of like 7, 8, 9K runs, it is a good hour of your day, like a couple of times a week.
I do find as well, so I normally do 3 runs a week. I do find if I do, and I normally do a longer run on a Sunday, and if I do a 10K, it will kind of knacker me out, like mentally. When I get home, I'll just probably have a nap or watch something and drink tea and fall asleep, and or go in a bath or something. It genuinely does kind of take it out of me. So now I have to kind of think, do I want to be tired for the rest of the day, or shall I kind of pull back a little bit and do 5 miles or something? Has it affected your writing? Do you feel like you've learned something from running that you can apply to your writing? Left hand, right hand?
No, I don't know. I think it helps when I run in the morning to energize and focus my mind, and to get me to do the things that I want to do. Like I can feel the mornings when I haven't gone out for a walk or a run or just done some kind of fresh air. I think that's one thing that I have learned. I very much, because you're very, very sedentary a lot of the day, just getting out, getting some fresh air, getting your body moving is like nothing beats it. But I think if I had done running before writing, I would have learned some lessons. But I think a lot of the lessons I had in writing, I took to running, because it's incrementally building things up. So that you can set a baseline and understand what your baseline is. And obviously when we were writing books together a few years back, we had our own sort of word counts. We knew what we could get each day. And I've learned over time that I can build that up and build that and build that up like a muscle, like anything. So I think if had it been the other way around, perhaps, but if anything, I took the lessons I had from writing into running.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I mean, just because you just reminded me of it, the Tim Ferriss episode with Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh,
yes. That one yet?
Yes, of course I have.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite recent podcasts I've ever listened. That's the kind of podcast I find certain episodes that I will just revisit. And I've started to keep a YouTube document, a note on my notepad, on my notes app, of just podcast episodes that I'll go back to that I can revisit if I'm feeling sort of drained. And that's gone on there.
There are certain people. Seinfeld's one of those. He just the way that he phrases things and thinks about things, very, very it's very, very black and white. It's very logical. It's very clean. This is do's and don'ts. And I think that's very, very helpful sometimes because I think one thing that I took from that particular podcast that I've been bringing into mine, it was weird because I'd literally started doing it a few days before that episode, is when he was talking about constraining yourself and saying like you give yourself a window of time that day and that's when you do the thing. He's talking about writing jokes and things. So that's the time you do the thing. And what I found with my writing at the minute is that because I have the whole day to do it, I let it drag out. Yeah. But I can, and I know I'm capable of sort of big word counts in short amounts of time if I constrain myself. So I started like just dedicating a time slot to my writing each day, and that's what I give myself. Yeah. And then anything else, because once I've hit what I want to within that time, it's like, well done, pat on the back. And it's like what we used to talk about when you've done your words in the morning and you know that the rest of the day is clear to do whatever you want. There's like an achievement in that.
You feel like you've won the day at that point. Yeah, that was the concept I was thinking about again. I miss winning the day. When you get up in the morning and you sort of cram through your to-do list quite early on, and then by 1 o'clock you're like, you finished, like you kind of won, and anything else on top of that just feels kind of playful or just good. It's just gravy on top.
Bonus points. Because how are you managing your time now? Because I think
in January we talked about it.
Are you still bullet journaling?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Because I was going to ask, it feels like from the outside looking in, because this year I've been less involved with the other story stuff, and you've taken a big brunt of that in terms of like the production and stuff. It feels like there's extra work there, or like it feels like you're obviously doing a lot here and there. So how are you managing all your projects and all of your time around obviously work, because you're full time, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, it's an ever it's a process. You're just sort of constantly finding it. I don't know. I mean, I think I do constrain myself, actually, to be honest. I have a couple of systems that I haven't really thought about, but I guess they are systems. I have an app called Streaks.
Yes.
If you've heard of that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I have like a bunch of like stuff that I have to do every single day. Journal, meditate, which I've been doing a lot this year, actually, which has been really helpful.
I so need to get back into that. That's another thing for next year.
Yeah. It's surprisingly how often I fall asleep there.
Drinking a lot more water. Are you morning meditate? Evening?
Recently it's been morning, but I quite like to do it in the afternoon. So around about 2 o'clock, I'll get really tired mentally, and I'll do like a meditation slash snooze there, and I'll be ready for the afternoon. I do one lesson a day, and this could be anything, like a YouTube how to do something. It started out when I was doing the game dev. I was like, I'll just do one lesson on coding or asset production, or one part of game development, and it just carried on from there. So I always try and learn something new every day. I have read a book. I've got like a timer for that, which I do every day. I mean, all this stuff is just every day I have to do this. I have to write. I have to do some dev work, which I guess would be maker's time, whatever you call that. It's just like a timer. I get it going, and it has to be some sort of creative project. I think I had to just call it dev work because I'm like, I'm not, because I'm doing a bit of everything at the minute. I just have to cover all bases and just kind of, I don't know, I have to mark it down somehow. So I guess there's that, and I sort of tick those off every day. Still working quarters, broken down into months, and then broken down into weeks, and then broken down into days. And I do feel like I'm maybe not so good at longer projects, which is something I probably want to work on. If it's over 4 months, I'll forget about it, or maybe it's a good thing or bad thing. I don't know, because if I'm not thinking about it, it must not be that important to me.
I mean, you'd hope.
Yeah.
I definitely need to get better at. Again, I need to get better at forecasting and giving myself time to look ahead, because I think I'm very much Joe Marvin the Martian from Looney Tunes, like little legs, just like blah, blah, blah. That's just me. I found myself in a position in which, particularly this year, with it being like my first full year of being full time and having to manage my ghostwriting work with sort of my own projects and stuff, I feel like this year was really an exploration of what I can fit into my time. And that doesn't necessarily correlate to what should I fit into my time. Because so
you can probably fill your car with clowns, but do you want clowns in your car?
Exactly. It's good to know. Doesn't help you get there faster. So I think I'm being a lot more deliberate. But I have also found this year, like probably the biggest lesson I've had, or biggest surprise I've had this year for myself, is my tangent into the non-fiction arena and like supporting authors stuff, because
services and that kind of thing.
I mean, obviously we've dabbled with a couple of short story courses that we've done for people to come on board and learn how to write short horror stories, but I don't, even though I've podcasted and done all that stuff, I've never really felt I had the confidence or the know-how or the expertise to go into that arena. But then published collaboration for authors this year. Obviously, Great Writer Share is still running. Started doing the Next Level Author podcast with Sasha, and now there's just like a bug. Like, I'm really enjoying actually working physically with people on their books, on their writing, on their projects, and helping with that. And what is surprising there as well is that I wasn't expecting it to reward financially, but it also is, which is like not the entire onus, but obviously it's a bonus to, keep supporting and going. Yeah. So it'll be interesting next year. There'll be a lot more from me of book coaching, of like running my boot camps. I've got a book on productivity that I'm sort of putting out and working on at the minute. But that was an avenue that if I had thought about it in March, April time would never have happened. I was very, very heavily fiction, and I still am, and I still love writing fiction. But I think I've now gotten to the point where I've written so much for other people and in areas that aren't necessarily aligned with where I want to go long term. Then now I'm starting to be a lot more deliberative about what I want to work on and where it's going to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I'm in a very similar boat in terms of writing. I will now only write fiction that I want to write. Like, I feel like I know it took me a long time, but I think I know exactly what kind of writer I am. And it's not the most commercial, which is fine.
But you're very good at it.
I feel like
I do
I'm
love
just
your work.
naturally tuned to writing weird horror and weird comedies. It's just what naturally comes out, and that's just what that's what I enjoy doing. That's so. What did it say in the Story Studio podcast? Not ours, the new one. Genre therapy. They call it genre therapy, I think. Where they kind of try and help someone find what genre they're naturally attuned to. I'm naturally attuned to the stuff that's probably never going to make a ton of money, but that's completely fine. And I just feel like I'm keeping my sovereignty on that, because that is I don't mind doing other stuff on top of that, but for this particular type of thing, I don't want to dilute it, and I think that's I don't know, that's just the way it goes. Maybe it'll evolve over time. Maybe I'll be less strict about it. What about you?
Well, I mean, it was interesting because when we first started writing together, we thought we were being commercial.
Yeah,
and
we did,
and in a way we were. I do think that the Rot series particularly is probably the most commercial thing we have done. I think it hits a lot of tropes, and obviously it does get good feedback. But since then, I have gone down a rabbit hole of chasing the money, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned going down that path. And like, I've met people on the way. Like, I've seen inside places that I would never have got access to before. But what I am finding interesting is that most people, not everyone, but quite a lot of the people who originally went down that rabbit hole and on that similar journey to me are in a position where they're U-turning and they're going back to the things that originally made them joyful from writing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I've lost a little bit towards, the latter end of this year, is the joy of writing new fiction. And part of that is, I'm not in any way complaining about ghostwriting, because, it's ghostwriting can give a very stable income and a very decent income while you're working other things. But when your sort of salary job is ghostwriting and you're using that fiction muscle, and then you want to write fiction and you try it, and that's also a fiction muscle, it's very, very tiring.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I guess, kind of where some of my love for the non-fic stuff has come from. It's a totally different side of your brain.
Refreshing, I imagine.
Yes, you can mix it and match it. So I guess where I want to go with my fiction, I want to write horror. I'm definitely, like, I just keep coming back to horror no matter what I do.
Horror is the best genre.
It's
so wide-reaching. It's so wide-reaching.
You can be purple prosy. You can like create all weird shit. You can go literally anywhere. But I don't know if you know this, but actually at the beginning of 2020, one of my projects I was going to be working on was I was going to be writing an urban fantasy series with quite a well-known urban fantasy author. And I got 20,000 words into that novel and just went, no, it's like nothing resonated. It just didn't feel right. When I was doing that on top of ghostwriting for other people as well, it was just a whole lot of not me, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely coming around a lot more to, because I've learned I can write fast. I've learned that I don't necessarily want to. Because I enjoy the slow, deliberative process of getting familiar with the world, playing with the word choice, really kind of diving deep into the edits and all that kind of stuff that I've just not had a chance to do for a while. So,
I mean, this is a compliment, but you are quite a flowery writer. And I do mean that as a compliment. You are a very good wordsmith. What a better way to putting it is, rather than saying flowery, is you're very playful with your prose. So I imagine I can see you kind of wanting to play a little more with the pros and not rush past it and kind of enjoy that playing a little more as you're doing it.
Yeah, I've got a novella that I bought a cover for because I just saw the cover and was like, I need it. About 6-7 weeks ago, and that story's been stewing over into my head, and it's going to be very literary. To be honest, it's just going to be deep and heavy and weird, and like I know where I want to go with it, and it's one thing that I'm going to sort of treat myself to in the new year, but I'm still letting it percolate at the minute. But yeah, I've always had that sort of love of word and tone and style and how you can kind of like play around with it and stuff. And I think that was one thing that lent quite well to our books was I think the stories, I love the stories. I think the stories were strong. I think that we both sort of brought our own individual elements to the narratives and came up with good products. And actually, hopefully, I've been saying this for a couple of years, hopefully we'll have another one out soon. Which maybe we'll discuss after this.
We're going to talk about something else as well. Oh, the
yes,
an anthology. Okay,
yeah. We'll mark those two things. But yeah, I guess sort of in a roundabout way because we're coming up to the hour mark now. What two questions? Number one, if you could narrow it down to one particular lesson that you've learned from this year, what would it be? And number two, what are your expectations? What is the number one thing that you want to achieve in 2021?
Lesson learned from this year. I don't know. That's quite difficult. I would say it's something along the lines of you're able to do bigger things than you think. So you did the 10K. I used to think 10K was like impossible.
Yes.
Like it just seemed like an insurmountable distance. You're actually able to do quite amazing things. So you kind of have to have faith, a certain level of faith in that. So I made a feature film this year with nothing really, no money. And that seems insurmountable. That was like an insurmountable task. But it's not. I mean, you kind of have to just accept where you are at the minute, accept there's a big distance between you and this big unattainable thing, whatever it is, and just kind of have faith that it is attainable. You can do it. So I guess this year that lesson has just kind of been that's my big takeaway from this year. 2021. I'm building. I'm going to be writing a lot more. I'm going to try and. I have been quite. I keep seeing your small press stuff, and I keep thinking there's part of me that really wants to do that for this other genre that I'm really into called Bizarro, and make it like a sort of a literary Adult Swim kind of a small press.
I love it.
But
it's work.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and I don't know if I can do that. I'm still trying to simplify down to what I'm good at and trying to.
That's going to be hard for you because I'm trying not to like inflate your ego too much, but you are good at a lot of things because you understand learning and you understand the process and what it takes to get there, and you experiment so widely with so many different mediums.
Yeah, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It does take away from focus, but I just love experimentation, and I love sort of trying stuff out and thinking, I wonder if I did that thing I learned in Photoshop in After Effects in a weird, and I could make an animation. That's just part of me. I just always sort of feel like I'm in a laboratory. I feel like my laptop is like a big schoolyard that I can play in and make crazy stuff in. So I have to try and get away from that to some extent and just kind of focus. But I don't think I can. Yeah.
You got all the toys at your disposal.
So when I was doing like these little poems, I guess, as well. They were like tiny stories, little flash fictions. And I feel like that's a very, very distilled version of what I do. And that was kind of that was my breath of fresh air from doing all the craziness, like the big stuff, just going, no, let's just do it to 50 words, to write a story in 50 words.
Did quite a few of those as well.
Yeah, I'm still going to try and make a book out of that.
Nice.
Quite a fun project. Yeah. But what about you? Same questions to you, really.
So
And then
yeah,
I
I
have
think.
a quick fire round for you, which I didn't think
Do
you
you
were
actually?
expecting. Yeah.
Amazing. So that's throwing me off now. So the biggest lesson from this year, I will cheat and do two. Number one is one that I've mentioned already, which is I've learned where my limits are in terms of working too much, because I've worked constantly, even through all the pandemic. But I also think that, because I wondered, I had my brother was furloughed. I had lots of friends that were furloughed for various reasons, and I wondered whether or not, if I was furloughed, whether I'd stop. And I just don't think I would. I think I would have just continued as I did. I don't think there is nothing that I would have done differently this year. But I have taught myself to appreciate the need for rest and those sort of moments of restoration in terms of your creative well and inspiration, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to achieve in 2021, I'd like to be fully independent in terms of dropping client work. That would be amazing. But I think more than that, I just really want to try and strike balance between work and personal life, because I think one of the biggest challenges is when you're working in this kind of business is, in a way, everything feels like work. Because if you watch TV shows or films, there's story. If you're playing games, it's story. And there's always a part of you that's ticking. There's always a part of you that's working and looking at how you can incorporate things in.
Yeah.
And I actually stopped myself for a long time playing longer video games, because
this is why I play Rocket League, I think, for the exact same thing.
It's really, Rocket League's it's kind of like the same reason that I watch the same sitcoms again and again, because they're short enough that you can duck out, but you don't for 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I started recently, I picked up Last of Us 2, and I've been playing through that sort of slowly and taking my time and deliberately forcing myself to just enjoy it and just get lost in it. And that's been very, very useful. So yeah, I think balance next year is one of my main things.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. So it's time for our regular weekly quick fire round. It's going to be
flashbacks.
It's going to be a bit quicker than your quick fire rounds, because I didn't really think about this until it was too late. I've only got 7 questions. Super quick fire round. It's normally 10 for you, right? Number 10 questions?
Yes.
Okay, so now I've done 8. I'm adding that one in there.
Okay.
So nearly at 10. Okay, so are you ready to go?
Yes, that's 9.
Okay, who are you?
Daniel Willcocks.
10. This is going to be 10. Okay, the first real one. And number 1, underneath all of that hair, you are secretly bald. True or false?
True.
Can you keep a secret?
No.
Oh. Stephen King or King Kong?
Stephen King.
Mario or Wario?
Mario.
What was your birth position?
Prone.
It's amazing that you have that memory.
I was at home birth.
You have to. Were you really?
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick your starting Pokemon: Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander, or Josh Malerman.
Josh Malerman.
Speaking of Pokemon, if they asked you to rename the word Pokemon, what would you change it to?
Chronomals.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And that's it. Oh, no, we have a bonus question. Where can we follow you in your work?
You can find me and everything I do at danielwillcocks.com, and that's WILLCOCKS. And same to you, Luke Kondor. Where can people find out all about you?
Go to lukekondor.com, Kondor with K. Follow me on Twitter, Luke of Kondor, Instagram, Luke of Kondor. I'm Luke of Kondor everywhere, pretty much. So, yeah.
Luke from the Kondor.
Gives a Google, yeah.
Reminds me a little bit of Yvonne of the Yukon.
Yvonne of the Yukon?
Yeah. Did you ever see that cartoon?
No, I don't think so.
He was a French guy that, I think, I'm remembering this wrong probably, but he's a French guy that got washed up in like Canada. Like he turned into ice and then melted years later. I'll send you some links.
All right, okay.
We'll put it in the show notes for anyone that wants to find out more about Yvonne of the Yukon. But yeah, thanks for joining me, man. It's been great to catch up. Thanks everyone for listening. We will see you next week, and have a very, very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, filthy
everyone.
Animals. We went totally different ways with that. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Great Writer Share podcast. From all of us here at the Great Writer Share podcast crew, we wish you a happy and fruitful 2021. Don't forget you can get early access to every episode of the Great Writer Share podcast and the chance to ask guests any of your questions just by becoming a patron of the show. All you need to do is visit www.patreon.com/greatwritershare and support the show for as little as $1 a month. One more time, that's www.patreon.com/greatwritershare. Until next time.